Thanks for the introduction. First of all, these are all opinions you're about to hear that I've gathered. Okay, so that I did not do like deep research for a lot of this stuff. Felt it's going to be kind of more low key. So at the end, you can ask questions. You can kind of see where my opinions come from, whatever. They're also not the opinions of the MSTE office necessarily. So just how they give that disclaimer. All right. So yeah. Oh, here we go. First technical issue. I pushed the wrong button. 20 years ago, 91 to 95, I put in a lot of BS. Okay. I got bachelor's degrees in math, chemistry, and psychology while I was here, which is really not that impressive. Everyone's like, ooh, you got 3 degrees. Realistically, the last 2 were only because I didn't want to graduate early. So I needed something to do, to stay on campus. I didn't want to go anywhere else and, keep going with life. So I ended up actually, my math degree was my final degree. I started as I was in engineering, didn't want to do that, switched to psychology, finished that in a couple of years, and then added chemistry, and then I finally did math. And I don't know how I connected with the MSTE office. I did some undergrad work before I was a grad student, doing we were talking about the SIM study and data entry for it. And that's what I was doing as an undergrad. In that summer, it was my second semester of my senior year and into the summer, I just did hourly work entering data. So, but I have no idea who.
Jeremy and Bartush and Ben Helen.
Those are all after me. So I was, I don't know who was in the office.
All right.
Yeah, so I don't know how I got connected with it, but thankfully I stuck around for my math degree and I got connected to MSTE, so that was exciting. So then I stuck around and technical difficulty right away here. All right, I'll just go over here.
Maybe the batteries did that.
Yeah, it could be. There's another one in here. But I can stay over here. Not a big deal. So I got my master's. I went to med school. My parents really wanted me to go to med school, so I ended up doing that. Got my master's in education, and then I worked at the MSTE office for a couple of years. And then I spent a year in Bloomington, taught at Central Catholic High School, Bloomington Central Catholic. My wife was getting her teaching certificate from ISU. So I spent a year there, taught there. And what was really interesting, spending time in the MSTE office, there's a lot of discussion about integrating technology into the classroom. And so then I was dropped off in a school where they had absolutely no technology available in the building. So it was kind of an interesting experience because I planned really for 2 years on how to do stuff with spreadsheets and using the internet and all that stuff. And I had to quickly change gears and kind of go traditional classroom. And not just traditional, but really low budget, where we had very limited copies that you can make. Aside from the textbook itself, the resources were pretty limited. So it was interesting. It was eye-opening, and it was actually a good experience because when I went to Conant, now where I'm at now, James B. Conant High School is in Hoffman Estates. So I've been there now. This is my 18th year, perhaps. I don't know, something like that. More and more we have access to great technology. Right now we're on the one-to-one schools where every student now has an iPad. They get an iPad as they come in as a freshman, and they keep it for 4 years. And as a senior, they can buy it for a much decreased rate than whatever you would get an iPad for. Maybe if you spend it all 4 years, it might cost you $100 or $200. And they get to have the iPad that's got all of their notes and stuff saved on there. It's quite a resource. And we were given that the machine without much training, but as you'll see in my discussions later on, as teachers, we just kind of collaborating have used it more and more in the classroom. So that's where I'm at right now. We are a NetMath partner school, so I teach vector calculus with NetMath as our partners, and for students who have taken BC Calc already. This year we have a freshman in BC Calc. So I've already talked to his teacher about, I'm pretty sure AP scores don't count for more past 3 years. So he can't take the BC test this fall, this spring, and have it count for credit in college. I'm pretty sure it doesn't really work that way. So the trick is he has to take it, though, to take multi. So I haven't had that discussion yet. We could maybe figure out a bit around that. But it has happened. Finally, we've had sophomores in BC for years. And this is the first time we had a freshman. So anyway, that's just kind of Conant news. This is for Dr. Travers, and George. I'm not sure anybody else knows my family or wants to, but this is us at the beach. This last summer, I had a good picture, so I'm like, let me share it. So that's there. My daughter's 13, and my son's 11. My wife teaches biology at Lyons Township High School.
And what lake is that? Or where is it?
This is in Wisconsin. We were actually invited to come up for my sister-in-law's family get-together, just to come out and hang out. So, all right. So, I was telling George before I came out here, I was thinking, what am I going to talk about? Right? I mean, I could just kind of say, here's my family, and go through my family history, and then talk about what I do in my spare time. But I'm pretty sure people would not have shown up for that and had any interest in that if I had done that. So I started just kind of jotting down things that I have thought about, had discussions with peers about, gone to in-services about, had arguments about in like our office. We kind of sit in an office communally. We don't have our own classrooms, like our own designated classroom. So which is really nice because you get to talk about issues constantly. There's always a discussion going on about something. So one of the things, over-acceleration in grade school math. Case in point, freshman in BC Calculus. Okay? Legitimately, I've talked to the kid, he does our math team, he's fantastic at math. But very rarely does one of these super accelerated kids really shine in math. Which is, you think that a sophomore taking BC in high school should be really, really good. Not really. Okay? They're just really fast. They went through the ranks really quickly, but they were given a kind of a cheesy algebra, cheesy geometry, cheesy algebra 2, and now they're in high school, and a lot of times they struggle. We've had kids fail their first semester of their freshman course, which is a Trig Calc A course, honors course. They never had an accelerated course before in their lives. They took their junior high course, which was accelerated, right? So
What do you have thoughts on?
I've got tons of thoughts about that. We could just change topics and talk about that, But I actually, so these are things. So other thing, impact, culture, yeah, list of things. Culture and education. Okay, how do teachers' attitudes, students' attitudes, administration attitudes, how does that affect education? I have tons of stuff to say about that, but we're not going to talk about that. Mental math is dead. Okay, and my kids have, I've gone through, my kids going through school, they don't enforce learning mental math, which I feel is a complete disaster when they get to algebra. Because then their algebraic understanding of why 5x plus 6x equals 11x, they're not worried about the abstraction of the x, they don't know why 5 plus 6 is 11. And they're stuck on that while you're trying to move on to solving, like factoring, stuff like that. They can't do simple arithmetic, so that's a whole different thing. Is homework necessary? I actually teach AP Stats at my school. I have no homework in that class, and routinely my students score 5s and 4s on the AP Stats exam. Okay, and that is just a different way. I just kind of pound, it's not regurgitation, but we do lots and lots of problems, lots of discussion. 50 minutes a day. I tell them 50 minutes a day for 8 months. You give me, I will beat you to death over that math, right? But then you don't have to do homework, right? And then that's the only reason I can get. I have 3 sections of that course. And they know that there's no homework, and that's why they take it, because they can't fit it into their senior year otherwise. I used to kids drop all the time because of that. But we can talk about that. In my performance-based grading, we have a lot of discussion in our school about grades. Like, what is an A? It no longer necessarily means what it meant 30 years ago, but it can, performance would mean, can you factor a trinomial? Can you factor the difference of 2 cubes? That either can do it or you can't. There's no grade based on that. It's a skill. And there's all kinds of discussion we have about that. Literacy. My school had a huge initiative about literacy in the classroom, and they made math teachers, they wanted us to read to our kids. They got these really cheesy books called Circumference and the Knights of the Round Table. Yeah. Okay, have you ever seen this? So that's like a grade school book, and they said, you should read this in your geometry class. Why? Right? Because they don't understand that there's a literacy to math, but it's not what you would think about reading things. There's a definite literacy, and we made tons of stuff in our school about that, but again. And then collaboration, like I said, we all sit around in a classroom, which I think has been fantastic. When I was at Bloomington Central Catholic, we were in our own rooms, isolated from our peers. We did very little collaboration, didn't know what anybody else was teaching, didn't share ideas, right? And so there's lots of discussion for that too. But again, none of those things I'm going to talk about. If I've piqued your interest in any of those, you can invite me back. I can come back and talk about those. Okay, all right, so we know the symptoms. I'd say these are the symptoms that I'm here to discuss, right? So in the upper corner, we have, I just found this slide I thought was good. It was Hispanic versus white math and reading scores, okay, and the difference in a nationalized testing. Over here, this is international testing and how the U.S. lags behind other countries. We've seen that data. Just kind of a random slide about that. Over here, 2% of the U.S. students reached the advanced level in 8th grade math in 2007. And over here, it's students who are interested in STEM majors, okay? 48% of high school students are interested in STEM majors. So this would be good for you math advisors. I mean, that's just like, that's a symptom, right? Our students are not interested in math in high school. I have some of my smartest kids, some of my kids that take the net math course in multivariable calculus have no interest in doing anything with math. And I just wonder, like, why are you in this class then? You should have taken, AP biology, AP chem, maybe a foods course, maybe automotives. I don't know what you're interested in, but if it's not this, right, this is kind of a beefy course to take when you're not interested. I try to tell them, you probably should be interested, is where the money's at, right? Even if nothing else. So those are the symptoms, right? So then I said, what are the problems? And this is what we talk about as teachers. So some of you pre-service teachers, you're in the training, you may talk about these things in your courses, but when you become a teacher, I guarantee you talk about these problems, right? You talk about at meetings, you talk about in lunchtime, you have in-service about them. These are all problems, question mark. Are these the problems? And I would say that you could argue that, yeah, these are all issues that can individually be discussed, right? That they're legitimate in their in how much they influence education, the educational process. But personally, this is my opinion, right? After 20 years of teaching, and I tend to get a lot of agreement about this, the real problem with math learning, or any kind of learning, and I have 2 kids who have kind of seen a difference in them, and that is time on task, okay? If you don't spend time learning, you're not going to learn. It's fundamental. I mean, I don't know anyone has argued with me about this, but that's been my thought is all of those other issues, yes, they basically detract from time on task. That's the core problem. So if you want to learn something, you better spend time doing it. It's not going to happen because this, I found this, I really like this graphic. This doesn't work, right? Kids wish this worked, but there is no such thing as osmosis of learning where the concentration gradient of high info in the books transfers miraculously into the low info region of your brain, okay? Doesn't work that way. And so students need to spend time on math, and there's been lots of solutions. In the time I've been teaching, these are the solutions that have stumbled across my door path. At Bloomington Central Catholic, they had the Everyday Math series. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Everyday Math series, okay? In terms of sound mathematics, everything is fine in terms of in the book or whatever. In practical use, I couldn't use it in the classroom because the kids didn't want to read on their own at any point. So if you assign them, Everyday Math is from University of Chicago, and the premise is that there's thought-provoking questions. So you kind of do your basic understanding and you get some deeper level questions. Well, what it would turn out to be would be just sheer hatred of math, because if you can't read and you haven't been trained in reading up until the point you get into the deeper level problem, like the higher levels, algebra, geometry, and you haven't really had that mindset, you really start hating everything you do in math class. And that's what the kids came to me with that I faced, okay? Common Core is the big hot topic now, No Child Left Behind. These are all things that are supposed to be solutions, okay? And as a in-service teacher, none of that has been a solution. Actually, the problem seems to worsen every year as opposed to get better in terms of the kids spending time on task, right? Their math skills diminishing because they're just not doing math, right?
Amar, would you just say a couple more words about what are the teachers saying about Common Core that they don't like? What is
So I wouldn't necessarily say teachers, at the high school level, Common Core really has not gotten there yet. It's really in the grade schools, junior highs. Our algebra teachers maybe are kind of going into Common Core training sessions and trying to create curriculum, but nothing in our particular school, in my school, has directly done Common Core. What we have faced is almost all of our teachers have kids who are in the grade schools who've seen it, and it's that kind of that issue of, I'll give you my personal, I can't speak for other people, but my son has always been behind in reading, okay? So he has then automatically always been behind in math despite having good computational skills. And so I've watched this now through grade school, and his teachers kind of saying, he's just not very good at math. I'm like, I feel like he is pretty good at math, like that he can do his adding, multiplying, dividing, those things that now he's an 11-year-old, where I think he should be now getting into some skill sets of abstract topics, maybe doing some word problems. They've been beaten out of him so badly that he even starts reading a word problem and he quits because of, of his kind of, he tenses up and says, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Like, it's just an adding problem, or it's just, multiplying. So that's kind of what I would say is one of the things. But again, that's what's supposed to be a solution, right? Okay, so I spent 2 years in the MSTE office And I really agree with the statement. Teachers need to integrate technology seamlessly into the curriculum instead of viewing it as an add-on, an afterthought, an event. Okay? So we spent all this money at Conant High School getting iPads. We've had, teachers have had laptops for years, our own personal laptops they check out to us. Each of the rooms has its own computer. We have really nice projectors in every room. And a lot of times, I would say for the most part, up until the last maybe 2 years, most teachers still taught chalkboard, chalk and talk. You know, that would be the kind of discussion of it. The technology that was used in the classroom would be like, oh, you know what, on Friday I'm going to have a demo, a tech demo, right? Or, you know, we're going to go to the computer lab and do some investigation for 2 days, right? It would be a pullout. But in the court, and we, you know, some people had calculator. I do a lot on my graphing calculator for AP Stats. In fact, it's daily, random number generation, using tables, drawing charts, manipulating charts. So like that's like integrated into my AP Stats class. Well, that's part of the AP curriculum. It's supposed to be. But in other classes, it's not integrated. Okay, so I guess you could say I grew up, you know, through the MSTE office, thinking that I'm going to be using technology. In my first year out, that was where there was none available, and then after that, it was, you know, it was just, you know, so. But I was hoping that it'd be kids plus computers equals A plus. That's my daughter's idea. But you know, this is what you would hope. You would assume that everything would work out like that. You know, it's just going to be automatic. And so I think there was one class, maybe it was a class that Dr. Travers taught, I'm not sure. I just remember really discussing the dangers of just looking at technology and hoping that that's going to be the cure-all, right? So here are some dangers. Well, motivation, bad study habit gap. So the kids who are good, if you introduce technology in the classroom, they're going to continue to be good, and they're actually going to get a lot out of it because they're really focusing on using that technology, gaining that experience. The kids who don't care, now you're going to create a gap. I mean, they're still going to be somewhat engaged. I'm not sure if I should have connected to this. There's a video of a teacher who is talking to a screen, and he plays like a video on the screen. Have you seen this? It's on Facebook, viral Facebook, where there's a person lecturing on the screen, and they make a mistake within the lecture. They're doing a math lecture. And then the teacher who's watching the screen from the side like this says, oh, that's terrible. I can't believe that professor just made that mistake in this. That's ridiculous. That mistake should never be made. And then the person on the screen interacts, like basically it's a staged thing. And he's like, oh yeah? Let's see you do better or whatever. I could do better. And then they start talking back and forth because they have it timed. And then he like actually enters the screen and appears over here on the screen. Then he comes back out, and it's really clever. And all these people are like, "Oh, that's how education should be. This is fantastic. You know, why isn't every class like that?" First of all, it would take you hundreds of hours to make one class, right? But secondly, my thought was that would be great. You would engage the students really probably for the next 20 minutes. They'd be like, "Wow, what's this guy going to talk about? He's really captured my attention." And then that's going to fade, right? And you'll go back to the same level of whatever motivation and interest students have in the classroom. It'll kind of get back to that. Maybe you'll keep these guys a little bit above wherever they're at, but the good kids will keep going and the bad kids will keep going. So there's that gap that could exist in computers. All right. I've seen this firsthand, taking kids into a computer lab for some kind of activity, right? Without a good, really streamlined structure process about what they're supposed to be doing in the computer lab with the spreadsheet or with the internet, it just turns into chaos. You're just basically all you do, instead of trying to help kids get to a deeper level of understanding in whatever you're learning, you're just running around doing tech issues, trying to get people on task, trying to get them in the right direction. Okay? So there's very, very easily an issue for chaos when you're trying to do tech learning, because everyone's kind of different place, everyone's comfort levels are different. Okay? I've seen this comment a lot about like a net math kind of situation where you have isolation, right? So if you're learning distance learning, this is just common for any kind of distance learning, is if you're by yourself reading, right, and you don't have someone to bounce ideas off of. You don't have an instructor to ask when you get into a tricky situation that, and you know, there is something to be said about being together with people, right, and getting that kind of energy and assistance. And then the lack of assistance at critical moments. So I would say, as I really had not planned on this, but now you guys are here. So as a net math teacher, this is, I think, the most important thing about distance learning is that when you get stuck on something and you have that issue you can't figure out, it is really nice to have an expert there that not only can get you past that step, but make sure that when you get past that step, you have properly navigated the logical chain, right? So you're not just, I'm not just giving you the answer, which would be one thing, but it's like, now, here's why that's the answer. Now you can move on with the next level of learning because you have a, some fundamental knowledge of what just happened, as opposed to the answer, which isn't really knowledge of what's happening. You at least, you just only have one piece of information. Okay, so I think that's a key danger in tech learning. This would be common, right? This would be the inequity that could be built into a system where, internet and computers, like I said, the Catholic school I'm at, other schools that were, have lower budgets, don't necessarily have internet and computers. So if you make this, net learning or whatever, it's kind of an issue that can occur. Okay, and then let's see here. Oh, I won't say who, but we have to do net math. We have to go through the course ourselves. And there were 2 people in that process. We took an in-district course, and they gave up on doing net math because they hated Mathematica so much. That was their issue. They're like, you know what? I'm not wasting my time doing this and it was all coding, right? All their frustration was based on coding. So despite the good aspects of the course, they couldn't do it anymore, right? And so that can always be an issue. There is a learning curve.
Before they bailed?
Not long enough for the learning curve to finally get established. Exactly, but they,
my experience too. It's like after 2 weeks, it's like a
yeah, it was probably 2 or 3 sessions of our in-district course, which probably met once a week, and they bailed. And what you'll see is students have a much lower threshold for bailing on technology. Okay, the graphing calculator issue in my stats class, I always have kids come in and they have to buy their graphing calculator as a freshman. Every course requires it. Most courses don't integrate much of its use, but until I get to mine, and I say, you're going to use this every day. You need to bring this every day. And I'll have invariably someone say, I hate the calculator. I can't use the calculator. I can't figure out, And what'll happen is I'll just keep repeating the process enough where they'll get comfortable with it, but there definitely is a learning curve. And I tell, for the first time, our pre-calculus course is going to have 2 stats units this year. And so they dragged me into teaching pre-calculus just so I could facilitate this process. And a lot of the teachers were nervous. They're like, well, wow, we're going to use all this calculator stuff. The kids, when we use a calculator in class, like if they're graphing for the first time on a graphing calculator, there's lots of errors that come up because the kids will push, you could tell them whatever you want to say. Like you could go, 10 seconds on each individual button press and someone is going to type it wrong in the class. And then when they do type it wrong, they're going to get frustrated. And the next time you do it, they're all going to have that in their head that, man, I just can't do this graphing calculator. What's the point of this? So all of the benefits of it can be detracted by this issue. So
The business of some statistics in pre-algebra, is that what you said?
Pre-calculus. Pre-calculus.
What was the motivation for that?
I think this our old pre-calculus course fundamentally poured into our survey of calculus course. So it would be a non-AP course that would be for students who really weren't strong enough to take either the AB or the BC calculus, but they still were interested possibly in math, business, engineering, or something like that down the road. And so we'd give them a survey course to go to college. But now, less and less of our clientele from that pre-calculus course feeds directly into the calculus course. They could go into a quantitative literacy course that we have. They can go into other things. And so we've kind of made it a survey of math topics. It's trig, it's going to be statistics, and then it'll be pre-calculus. Yeah. So they can then choose their senior year kind of what they want to do. And then the last thing is, this was the number one thing that I remember I put it last, is that too often online learning just becomes an online textbook. So you're just on the computer staring at the screen reading, which you could just easily be reading without burning your eyes out in a book, right? So these are all things that are dangers, okay? So the solution, this is the topic, like the title, if this piqued your interest in coming today, was Gamify to Unify, okay? So last year, I would say, I would not have had even an inkling of what I was going to talk about here. Okay, this all kind of happened this summer. I took an in-district course on this concept of gamification. Now, how many people are familiar with that term? In college, is this the kind of thing that's discussed? So even at the college, and what I find really interesting is there's weird lag times going backwards and forwards between high school and college, right? So what the college kids know about and what is like appearing in high school could be like a 5-year lag time. Or it could be backwards. Like we're doing stuff in high school and no one in college really knows, that topic is. Okay? So this is a very, very hot topic, not just in education, but in business. So if you're not an education major and you're interested in going into business in the business field, gamification has become kind of the buzzword. I'm not sure if it's a fleeting thing. I feel like conceptually it's a very powerful thing that's not going anywhere. That it's going to just continuously, even if it's not in name taking over, the concepts are taking over. Okay? And so what is this idea? Well, playing a game, right, can take away some of these challenges, creating a good game. And so the top one, the motivation. Short-term motivation, right? Games provide short-term motivation. If they're designed well enough, you can develop skills that are underlying to those games, whatever the short-term activity is. So, you got like things are flashing, points are on the screen, your character is getting bigger or more powerful or got new clothes or whatever you think can motivate students, right? They play games all the time because whatever the simple, tiny, there's just stupid games that kids play, okay? There's this game they play, this is the dumbest game I can think of. It's called, now I can't remember the animal. I think it's llama, or something else, some other animal? That's the question. Is it a llama or is it another animal? And they on their iPad, and it'll flash a picture, and as quickly as you can, you have to say llama or the other animal, and you get points for how fast you can do it, and then they tell you a scoreboard nationwide who's answering llama or other animal fastest. Okay, that's the game. I don't even know what the motivation for that game is, but people play this a lot, okay? And if you consider the other games like Flappy, like the most popular games, Flappy Bird, what's the Candy Crush, all those games, like they have simple motivators, right? But they're compelling, and they're, it's very, very, the time that people put into that, you think about there's research that shows how much time people spend doing that instead of working, and how much money their lack of work goes into the economy. It's billions of dollars being spent on games. So there's definitely a short-term motivation that can impact those kids who are not long-term motivated in just learning, right? Because they're going to college and they're trying to get into a difficult program or whatever. So that's games. All right. Well, I forgot what that said. All right, KS, right? So if you play any games, and again, this is like a big if because some of you may not be game people. I am. And generally, in most games, if they're designed well, you don't have to worry about what you're supposed to be doing. It is crystal clear what the objective of the game is. Right? They force you into the pathway of what's supposed to happen. And if it's not immediately clear, if you're like stuck, if you're just standing, like let's say you're playing Candy Crush, okay, which is a game where you have to line up, I think, 3 of the same kind in a row for it to disintegrate and come down like Tetris style. If you're paused for too long, it gives you a hint. It says, hey, you should do this, okay? And so in the learning process in a game, if you're stuck in like a trinomial factoring, I keep coming back to that because I've just taught that to pre-calculus kids who should have seen that twice before, still can't factor, okay, basic stuff, because we're doing trig equations. And so it's very difficult to teach how to solve a trig equation when you can't factor the basic equation, okay? So, but if you were doing this in a good game setting, they could give you the equation, and then perhaps if you waited 5-10 seconds, they would say, well, maybe you should parse the first, like the 6 should be 2 and 3, or something like that. And then they can go from there. And that little hint could continue the learning process, the practice process, without hitting that wall as people would do it on a paper and pencil. Okay. Social networking is natural and vital in games, right? Every game that I've played on an iPad nowadays, when you sign in, do you want to link this to your Facebook profile? Okay, I say no because I don't want all my friends knowing how many games I'm playing. But it will. It'll tell you, oh yeah, Amar Patel has now scored 8 zillion on Candy Crush. You should join him. Or if you're playing a interactive game, you can ask your friends to send you things that you need in the game. Okay, so in a good math game, you could say like, I need a factoring hint. Like you can use like a call a friend or whatever. But I don't have any of those. Who can send me? George, send me a factoring hint. You can send me some of those. I can send you whatever you need in something else. Right? So there is that kind of, we're in this together, right, to get better. Lack of assistance. Khan Academy is kind of a big thing in schools. I'm not sure if you guys talk about Khan Academy itself or similar ventures, but the thing about Khan Academy is you need to go figure out what you need to learn, right? Like, I don't understand how to do this, so now I need to go to Khan Academy and know the language of what it is that I'm looking for to find the appropriate video that's going to walk me through that. Right? But it's going to be a complete 5-minute video that explains every aspect of it. Maybe you only need some fractional portion of it. A smart game would have that hint or suggestion. Does anybody play games where you can go to YouTube and get the walkthrough? Anybody ever looked at that? You guys see this, right? So if you go on YouTube, like my son actually, before we got, what was the game that we bought? Hold on. It was Lego Batman 3, okay, was the game that we just bought him a little bit ago. And before we got the Lego Batman 3 game, and we promised we'd get it for his birthday or something like that, and it was a while away, he sat on YouTube and watched the walkthroughs of every mission, okay? And only one time probably, I don't know, maybe he watched it a couple times, but when we got the game, and I would play with him, I kind of control his play and play myself a little bit, but like I said, we're going to do one mission today after dinner, and then it's going to be turned off. Okay, so he's happy with that, so we play. He knows exactly what to do on all the games because he's watched the walkthrough. Okay, so these things exist out there for games. It could be, and it kind of exists like in Khan Academy, right? But it's that same idea is that that's how games operate. Okay, so this is something fascinating. I was really curious about this. I think the idea of poor students lacking computers and the internet at home, right? Like hardwired internet. Well, I did a little study. It says that poor students, for some reason, I could not believe this, poor students are actually more likely to have a smartphone because it's cheaper to have the smartphone than to have home computer or internet, okay? And that blew my mind. So you could search that and you can see a couple of links that will come up and say that the staggering amount of tech access, but specifically in the smartphone market, right? So if a game, and a math game can be made in a smartphone, as opposed to most math stuff is made on computers, right? Or apps that you can use like an iPad or whatever. But if it could be constructed so that you could play and learn on a smartphone, poor students do have access to that. And many, many schools, I found a couple of you'd say, schools that are not as wealthy have access to iPads or tablets. Chromebooks is probably the cheaper alternative to getting an iPad, right? But they have access to this in more and more schools. It's increasing. So if they don't have it at home, at least they could have it mobily. Was that? And public libraries, that's right. I mean, there's always other ways you can get kids in their stuff. Okay, so the learning curve. Okay, so like I said, everyone can play games, right? The youngest kids at the youngest age can play games. In fact, my kids aren't young anymore, but my friends and colleagues who have really, really young kids, since we've had iPads, so I get my iPad from school. So one of my coworkers who has a 3-year-old, he says that he takes it home and he can play. He's got so many games he can play, and because they're so advanced on what they can figure out at that age. It's so intuitive, like the way they've structured the interface, that the youngest kids can play games. And so this online textbook thing, right? In many games, there isn't much reading really required. If they give you a hint, it's usually like, okay, just click on this. Or they'll visually, like the Candy Crush example, is they'll flash, like these are the 3 that you need to click on. Right? This is the thing you need to do, and they'll kind of highlight it and maybe give you a animation or something like that. And if done well enough, you can kind of make those little connections that are necessary that way. Okay, so these are all things that can be done. Now, in my classroom, I skipped this one. All right, so there's actually, this is something to look up. Octalysis is a company that, I don't know his first name, maybe it might be his name, UK and Chu, and he's like the expert right now. He's like the guru of gamification, okay? And his company, this is like their thing, so it says it in the middle. I'm not trying to steal this. But they talk about there's 8 core drives of gaming. And if you look at some of these, right, I actually didn't even think about half this stuff, and I kind of really looked at it and thought about games, especially like iPad games and these big, big mega games that everyone's playing. You have ownership, right? Like the avatar. You have a character that you develop in a lot of these games. The accomplishments are pretty obvious, but even meaning. Like when you're playing games, they have a narrative, so that's kind of driving what's going on, and you're trying to get some importance to what's happening. You're the hero of humanity, right? If you do this, you can win this quest. Okay. So these are things that can be integrated into in a math system, for example, specifically math. Okay, but that's a great site to look at. And so companies do this now, not for students, for their employees, right? So they incorporate gamification into their training modules. So hey, we want our people to learn the newest, best thing in this system, this computer system. So they'll set it up in a game situation so people go on and they play throughout the thing to learn it, as opposed to having a boring meeting like this. They'll actually do it, and people will sit and actually play through that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's something to look at. All right, so in my classroom, this is where I was going with this. So this is a thing that we use all the time, pretty much on not daily, but every other day or so. The kids will come in and say, are we going to do a Kahoot today? That's the question. Are we going to Kahoot today? And that Kahoot is a website. Okay, so for the people who are going in education, become familiar with Kahoot. It's a fantastic website for now. It's probably one of the best things you can do for constantly getting direct and immediate feedback from your students. Okay, so you get immediate feedback, like you ask this question here, and you can answer this. Okay, and then what happens is once everyone answers, it takes a certain amount of time, 26 seconds, the answers come in, and then they show you what people's responses are. Not any individual's responses, just aggregate responses. So let's say 15 people answered this, it'll have a bar, a histogram bar that's 15 high, and then have the rest of the things, and it'll tell you what the correct answer is. So you immediately know how you did on that question, the student does. You know how the class is doing, right? So I had a review I was doing the other day where every question was basically people were guessing. It was straight uniform distribution across. And I'm like, wow, they don't know any of this. We're not taking the quiz tomorrow. This can't happen, right? So as a teacher, I knew that this was a good formative assessment before I got to something more critical, just because what was the point of giving that quiz to my students at that point? I already knew what that result was going to be, and it wasn't going to be good. Okay, so kind of pushed it back, talked about different topics. What's also nice is you can download a spreadsheet of all of the students' responses and their scores for later on. Okay, so you can actually use this as a, when kids, because what'll happen invariably is they'll get kicked off the network, right? And I say you can't just then leave and go play on your iPad, because I have no idea, it's not really easy to walk around 32 kids in a room to kind of make sure they're still on the Kahoot, right? But I'll see my answers are dwindling down. They'll get down to 28, 27 kids are in the class instead of the 32 that started, because the network bumps people off. Okay, ours does. And so you can look later on, because I said you need to get back in the game, right? You can tell if kids are just randomly guessing because they're getting everything wrong. So you can check that out. It's a really useful tool for that. The next thing. This is a cool thing I found this summer called Classcraft. Okay, so if you're familiar, I saw a Minecraft sign downstairs when I walked in. There's Warcraft. There's, what's it called? Starcraft. These are all games that you can play. And this is one where it creates a skin over your classroom where each of your students are given this kind of avatar, right? And they have different characters they are, where they're wizards, they're warriors, they're healers, right? They can be something. And then as they answer questions or get things right or do good on a test, you can increase their skills, right? Or you can give them damage, like, oh, you answered that question incorrectly, now you have 5 points less thing. And the kids really get into it. The difficulty is you have to prep all of this ahead of time and stay on top of it in the classroom. Okay, I've seen people do it really well. I tried using it, and eventually, and the kids are really enjoying this. You can get pets, students can have their own pets or whatever. But it was just that aspect, I couldn't keep up with that, and on top of whatever else I was doing. Okay, so it was not automated enough to be useful for me, right? I think its best place for this was in a junior high classroom. Okay, I use this in my Sunday school class. This is called the 3D Game Lab. So what happens here is that you can create little mini lessons, which are basically, depending on how good you are, can usually just be an online textbook. But if you have some videos, you can embed videos into these files. You can have a question at the end, so it's a little bit interactive. But basically, someone can click on the slope and slope intercept and go and learn something, and then they have to submit something. Okay? They don't have their own quizzing system like Kahoot. If they had that, this would be fantastic, because then you can actually assess within your things. Right now, you can only ask a couple questions at the end. Okay? But the students do that, and then once they finish this, they get experience points, right? And so at the top here, we have Silver Wolf. He's a noob, which means he's at the first level of whatever this game is. And he's got 1,950 experience points. Okay? And if they get enough experience points, they give you rankings within your group of how good you are. If you get enough experience points, you go up a level. You can get badges. Okay? You get little awards. And kids love that stuff. Right? And in fact, adults love that stuff. That's why you play Candy Crush, and all those games have these little things. Every time you accomplish a level, you're given something, like a token, and people really get into this. So the problem with all this, okay, well, first of all, before I get to the impediments that I was going to talk about, is that none of those things are integrated. right? They're all like their own platform. They all make money, right? So they have no incentive really to be integrated. And it's too hard for teachers. So teachers don't have time to utilize all of this stuff effectively, right? So I try to use a little bit of it. Kids love it. It really does enhance their experience. But to really make it effective, I don't have the time to put in to really do it well, okay? Oh, I just bumped that, so that's a problem. What else? So teachers don't have time. Oh, college students. When I was a college student at Unify, now I think, George, did you send me a link about someone caught a mistake in one of those things, those modules I made? Yeah. So 20 years ago, I made a thing on linear regression and a thing on chi-square. And I looked back at it and said, oh, you made a mistake, so let me go look at that. I haven't looked at it forever. I'm reading this, I'm going, this is horrifyingly bad, okay? In my perspective now as a teacher, having been in the classroom, you know, I'm like, this, and for my students, would not be functional because they'd get lost somewhere along the process. If there was a teacher there with them, probably would be okay. But now that I look at that, I could do a much better module, you know, now. And so as a college student, I had the topics, I understood what I was talking about, right? But didn't have the classroom experience to know where that was going to go. So those are two things. Next, the best developers of this stuff are going to follow the money elsewhere, right? They're going to go to Google. They're going to go to Apple, right? They're not going to go to a startup gamification thing for math ed where you're going to be able to pay them whatever your grant money allows you to pay them or how you have your financing. So that's an issue, okay? There's also too much money propping up the status quo. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with textbooks and textbook manufacturing and pricing, right? But basically, our district is almost about to go to completely scratching textbooks and paying teachers to create our own textbooks in-house to not pay the mafia millions and millions of dollars. Okay?
Do you know other districts that are doing this? Is that happening?
It is happening. It is happening. I mean, the prices just have become insane.
Right.
And with iPads now going around, you know, but there's money in that. There is still money in the textbook process. And so that would be also against this process, right? So they're not going to be interested in financing this.
Is your school buying lesson plans created by teachers elsewhere?
Yeah, okay, so that actually goes too soon. Oh no, wait, where is that? Okay, somewhere I have that. But no, there is not that collaboration too far outside of our own district. You know, and you think about how you could really have good materials nationwide created, like just stellar stuff that we could all share. That's not happening right at this point.
Well, there's a teachers pay teachers resource.
Mhm.
Is that what you were thinking about?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
You haven't used that or seen that?
I have not personally used it, no. Yeah, so, and that would be something. Existing platforms need to cooperate. One of the things about gaming that you could set up, theoretically, would be that your iPad could be shut down from Facebook, YouTube, Netflix, all these are all things that the kids get onto, right? Until they've accomplished something in your game, right? So those platforms of Facebook, they would have to cooperate and say, all right, we'll let you figure out a way to turn our thing off until you want the kid to use that thing. Well, that's easier said than done, okay? And then, let's see what else. Oh, okay, so but upside, I mean, like we talked about this, real acceleration, right? Kids really can understand stuff, personalized learning. This is a big one, okay? Big one is like data collection. I've talked about this forever, like to really, as kids are answering, like a Kahoot, I can collect some data, right? But you could collect so much data about how quickly what step in a problem is a student getting faster, right? And the good ones who are getting the fastest, the most answers, where are they successful? And then you could take that information and feed it back into the system and say, we really need people to be good at this step because this is what the step that people are, the best students are best at this, right? The critical moments in a problem. Because I feel like there's, in a lot of algebraic stuff, there are those critical moments, right? It's that spot where if a student really gets this, the rest of it is just arithmetic. It's not the algebraic concept, okay? So there's a treasure trove of data that can be collected about this.
Amar, on that one, you said that there's a lot of interaction with your colleagues. To what extent is that interaction data-driven? That is, are they using, hey, I found this on slope-intercept in my class.
Right.
What about in your class?
So we're actually forced to share like our quiz scores, test scores, and even within that, we'll break down like kind of responses. Like there's, most of the kids are taking this distractor answer, right? Why is that happening? So we do stuff like that, but in terms of like the real kind of deeper analysis, I'm not sure if the expertise even is there to discuss those topics, right? This would be something that a college, research would be doing and looking at. Constant feedback. and assessment, right? So a lot of those things I showed you, like that Classcraft, that's really, it's just a really nice look. It makes the kids really engage in like being involved in the classroom, but they're not getting any direct feedback or assessment from that program. You have to use something else, like the Kahoot, to generate your feedback and assessment, okay? So if it's a completely integrated system, that should be happening as you go along, right, in some way. This is a big one, nationwide norming. So now we have all this discussion about state to state, and well, if everyone's playing the same game and you're collecting data across the country, right, that would really be effective for comparisons. And then the collaboration issue is that if it's nationwide, all teachers are looking at the same data, and they can also have like a message board that's nationwide. Hey, what can you do to help your kids, okay, through this process? And that's my final thought, is that kids just need to be doing it, right? The more they can do it, if it's a game, they're going to do it, right? They have to do it. Like, you have to play this game for 15 minutes. They will do that because it'll keep them engaged, right? It'll be.
What portion of your teaching is this gamified?
So I've actually, in my my AP class, I would say there's Kahoots for kind of assessment, but I'm usually just doing like calculator activities. So it's not really gamified in that sense. I am driving discussion and repetition to avoid that homework issue. I'm just nonstop me doing more and more problems, having them, randomly calculate stuff, look at distribution, that sort of thing. We did the Classcraft as a skin in the NetMath course. So they were kind of, the students were working on their give it a tries, learning the tutorials, and then I would kind of give them bonuses for keeping up. Because that's the biggest thing that we get, is they kind of fall behind on their timetable. I give them a timetable for when they need to be doing stuff, but they'll invariably use the day, like, oh, I really need this AP bio class, I have a test in or whatever, can I not do my problem? Look, this is your time, but if you stay on time, I would give them points and gold bars and stuff like that, and they actually liked it. They actually did keep them more on task. But yeah, I would say it's not as much as I would like, but again, I just can't integrate it enough, And I think that's it. Yep. Now we can leave it there. Anybody else? Questions? Yes.
With the nationwide norming and comparison, what would stop that from being similar to Common Core?
Okay, so I think the issue when I said Common Core, it's not so much that you're getting data and assessing, but one of the biggest things about Common Core that people argue about, or any kind of thing we're just testing, like No Child Left Behind, lots of layers of testing, is that when they're taking a test like a bubble-in test, so you take this test, first of all, we have to stress the kids out. Like my kids actually get these stressors sent home, and they're like, oh, this is very important, so take it, sleep really well, have a big breakfast or whatever, and my son freaks out every time he has a big test coming. And I'm like, I don't care what you get, just go do your best, but that's his personality. I think in this situation, I don't think assessment should ever be like this high stakes, like you sit down for an hour and you're working on a problem. I mean, you're getting assessment constantly as they're going, right? So in the heat of the pleasure of a game experience, right? That seems like the most honest, most raw form of assessment. They're just in the moment, so you're getting the most natural inkling of what the student actually can do, as opposed to, I would say, an artificial situation where you created this test question on a given day in the midst of other test questions. You know what I'm saying? So, which would be also performance-based, as opposed to conceptually. Yes?
Could you tell a little bit more about how does a no homework school play?
So in AP Statistics, when I first taught it, I taught it for a couple of years where I had homework assignments. The teacher that taught it before had given me her materials, and I kind of used her assignment guides as a first-year teacher, kind of to say, these are the things that we've done in the past. Let me go with it. Let me see what happens. And homework completion was low. It wasn't 10%, maybe like 50% of the kids would do their homework. And then I found that some of the best kids wouldn't do their homework and still get A's on everything. And so I was considering, okay, so there's clearly not a 100% relationship between homework completion and in this course. And I tried to cover as many of the homework questions in class that were assigned, so I'd only have to assign maybe 3. Okay, now do the last 3. Okay, and I saw that it actually improved grades. Okay, that they were doing less homework because I was going over the problems that I thought were important and just getting through them in class a little bit quicker. So I'd cut down maybe on direct didactic work where I'm teaching the entire lesson. I would teach a part of the lesson, and then I'd teach more within the problems themselves, right, in context with the questions that I wanted them to learn. And it got to a point where students would drop. They would basically sign up for my course, and then AP Chemistry, AP English, AP Spanish, all these AP courses. And I would have 4 drops in the first 2 weeks of school out of AP Statistics. And I'd say, why are you dropping? And they'd be good kids. These are like strong kids that were good in school. And they said, I just don't have time for this. I realized, I started my senior year, and I was looking at how much homework I have to do, and I just do not have time to do homework in this class on top of calculus homework and whatever. And I said, well, that's a terrible reason to drop statistics, because this is your best chance to take this course, take a statistics course before you get to college, and have to be thrown to the wolves in a statistics course. So that's how I rearranged it. And again, it is a lot of focus on breaking down problems so that I'm teaching concepts within the problems over and over in slightly different ways, just so they can get different perspectives and then do the problems well. So that's kind of where I go with the no homework. It doesn't really work in other classes, though.
Do they do more in class?
Absolutely.
I understood what you.
Yes, we do. I do so much more in class, and now with the iPad, and they have I used to photocopy packets for them, or have them bring their textbooks with them. On the iPad, everything is there. So with that, I think we accomplish with the iPad probably 20-30% more each day, just because everything's at their fingertips. Note taking, my examples, I can upload stuff to them constantly, and so there's just more done. I mean, we get 50 minutes out of every day in that class, and most of it is time on task, where the kids are they're engaged. I have them, collaborate with each other. It's like, here, you got 3 minutes, do this problem. Ask your neighbor, if you get stuck, and then they argue and they talk or whatever, and we get back. And so it's pretty much, I think that's where I get away with that, is that they're just working more in class, more effectively, I would say.
And why doesn't it work in other classes?
I would say the big thing would be calculus to be my example, is that because of the statistics just has less what we do for the AP curriculum. There's less hand algebraic manipulation. It's more conceptual, right? And so I think that's where the big thing happens in calculus, is that you just need to do algebra, and go through the motions. If you only wanted kids to set up integrals, you could probably do it, by not having any homework. But if you actually want them to do the integral, they're gonna have to practice it at some point, all the different algebra steps, algebraic manipulations and such. It's my guess, I would say.
What about Unify? Gamify to Unify.
Oh, that's a great question. So the unification, I guess, was in my mind was implied, right? But as a nation, right, that whole idea of everyone's playing the same game, and really realistically, my hope would be that we could come up with the Uber game, right? That is designed collaboratively throughout the country, where everyone now it's like our best minds are on this. It is the best setup for doing the whole host of games. And so if that happened and everyone was still working towards this goal of having the best system, then the unification would be there, that everyone is kind of driving towards the same goal and with the same access to the success, as opposed to right now it's very fractured of who has access to the best resources. So that was my thought on that. But my vision for this would be that you could log into your gamer profile and have the appropriate designation, so that Classcraft was all medieval warfare concepts, right? You're a wizard, you're a warrior, you're a healer, right? And so you get armor and weapons and stuff like that, and magic, okay? But what if you're an athlete and you want to be a football player? Well, you should have access to then have your skin be football player. All of your things you win are related to being a football player. You get better shoes, and you can run faster and jump higher or whatever. If you wanted to be a singer, okay, so now you have better musical equipment, right? So I think that would be the idea, that everyone would have access to what interests them, so the motivation will always be there for any particular student. And then, that best way to do it, I would say, would be build it from grade school, where the concepts are the easiest to develop. And then build on. Like I said, the acceleration, it's like the true acceleration. This is what happens with, this is my favorite topic I talk about, actually, aside from this, is that when these kids come in as freshmen in Trig or Calc A, they have gone through algebra, geometry, algebra 2, right? But there's nothing deep in that material. They've seen the basic, most easy problems in all those classes, and then they wonder why they can't do accelerated material in high school, right? But they've never done a word problem that really asks them to do something involved. They've never done a problem that requires 3 steps that are incongruous, right? So you can really get true acceleration. So if a kid gets through all of their addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, right, now you can then have them practice word problems. But like for my son as an example, he had never learned his addition before they started throwing word problems at him. So that was a mental block for him to complete his process of learning the memorizing, I guess, the addition steps. So you're trying to do both at once, and actually neither one. He still counts on his fingers for addition, but he has all of his multiplication tables memorized because the teacher made sure that he had that down before they moved on with whatever else, which is kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
So he can do any multiplication up to 10 times 10, but if I ask him to do 6 plus 5, he'll count it out on his fingers.
Are you worried?
No, and it's all getting, it's pretty much resolved itself. He'll still do it, but now that he would do like 4 plus 3 on his fingers, and now he doesn't do that anymore. Now he's got that skill. So as it's just, the habits have been formed, but yeah, so it kind of has resolved. But that would be my goal is that, or my dream would be that would be the case, that a student could be able to log in and just play, and in that playing process, things are getting done, right? The teacher is there as an expert to help those critical moments of, hey, I'm stuck with this idea.
If you didn't have daughters,
I have a 13-year-old daughter.
oh,
Yeah, and she's a math whiz, but she doesn't like math.
what about the girls in your class? They
Oh.
buy into the gamification.
They do. Yeah, that was actually really interesting in the summer when we were talking about this. The instructor said, I don't know. I have a lot of nerdy guys that like this, and so I brought it in the classroom. And the girls actually, what they liked about that game, and it was maybe something different, but they really loved because you can dress up your character with different outfits, right? And they would really spend time making them look right. And they were also because the character, that game is particularly social. So if I took damage on somebody, they said, I don't have my homework today. All right, minus 10 hit points, right? They would heal each other. They'd be like, oh, can you heal me? And they go and they write. The guys would be like, I'll do it later, whatever. You can be fine. But they had that kind of more social aspect. So the kids, they like different things, but they like games. That's definitely true.
And nothing intrinsic mathematics, so it's all kind of out of the realm of mathematics, all the questions, all the motivation is outside.
Well, that's a great question. So that's the thing is, I would say, and like the math people left, but I feel like, for whatever reason, in our student base, very few kids are really, really interested in math. Like the concepts of math, and I think a lot of it has to do with how math is done in the grade schools. And so they just it's something that you have to do. You're gonna have to suffer through it, right? But the joy of the math in the process is just, I don't know how you would motivate that in students at the grade school level when it's structured the way it is, with the classroom experience. I don't know. Yeah. I do get some kids that are very, very intrinsically motivated with math, though. They want to be math majors. They want to do, they're on math team. I coach math team. And so those are the kids that generally will end up in math team, and we have a pretty good chunk of them, but from day-to-day kids, that's math and science are not, something they really look at. We need another, I guess, space race, right? Isn't that what we did in the 60s to get kids, or the 50s to get intrinsically motivated in math?
Do you get opposition from parents on gamification?
No, actually, that's funny. For the first time, so one of the things I do with Kahoot is I make it a teaching tool sometimes. I don't even ask them questions. I'll actually have a video being played, and then I'll just kind of say, well, did you like that? And so in my open house, I did the whole thing with Kahoot, right? And so, in open house, you kind of answer questions like, when am I available? What is the grading process and stuff like that. So I said, when am I available? And I had one real answer, which was my free periods or before after school, and the other 3 were like, at midnight, on a full moon, or at the bottom of the ocean or something like that. I don't even know what I wrote down. But they did that. I said, this is what I do in class, and they really liked it. But there was only like 10 parents there. But I have never had a complaint from a parent saying that.
The administration.
The administration's all for it. They want people to use the iPads. I think more than anything else, administrators are, not really so much on the concepts as you're using what you have. That's right. They paid a lot of money for this. So the fact that kids are using it for a purpose. Yeah.
And your colleagues are all on board?
No. Well, and most of that comes down to people don't have time to invest.
Of
You know, teachers, and for whatever reason, my department, I'm not sure if this is true about most, but we all have kids around the same age or younger. There's a lot of people in that age group, and so you're lucky, you know, to get home and get anything done after your own kids' school stuff is done.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, but the opposition might come from teachers who say, you didn't get them ready for my class.
that's fair enough. I mean, there's still, one of the things about our collaboration in our particular school is we all have the same assessments, so they all take the same tests. Regardless of how you teach the material, they're going to take the same tests and the same final exams. So it would be pretty obvious that you're not getting the concepts across, because the tests are all paper and pencil, you know. So if you were falling behind in your student success on that, you really couldn't hide it, I would say. If this was not functional as a vehicle for concept learning. But so I haven't had that issue, you know.
Is there much student mobility at Conan?
Upward and downward in tracks, is that what you mean?
No, that is, the students you have as freshmen are pretty much, they go on as sophomores, they don't disappear.
Leave the school, is that what you're
Yeah,
talking
leave the
about? Oh,
district.
no, yeah, it would be a school that
Stable.
is very stable, yeah, population, I would say. Hmm. I mean, they call it, what do they call it, the graveyard district, right? People go to 211 and they don't leave
Okay.
until you retire. Yeah, so teachers, right? But I would say that people move to that district so they could get their kids through high school. Yeah, that's definitely a place like that.
And you've been there for.
That's right. Well, and again, yeah, I mean, like I said, the great community, salary structure is really good. You know, the climate, the culture is pretty good, even though I have things that I could say about like school culture. It's overall very good. You know, I've heard much worse horror stories from other districts about how their faculty is respected and, you know, support they get for anything, education, discipline, whatever. All right, anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, thank
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.